Today we honour the Dark Lord Sauron by using oppressive and niche colour hosing spells and hacking the colour words in their text boxes to control the game while incidentally creating an army of wraiths. This might just be the most evil deck featured on my channel so far. It's time for the MTG Specs Villain Edit. Hello, I'm Lee, welcome to MTG Specs and to my deck building series House of Middle-earth, where we explore the deck building strategies of a commander from the Lord of the Rings universes beyond set. Today we cower before the awesome power of Sauron second in command and the perfect commander for a Dimir control heavy spellslinger deck, Lord of the Nazgul. Lord of the Nazgul is a Wraith Noble. For 5 is a 4/3 flyer, gives our Wraiths protection from ring bearers, and whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we create a 3/3 black Wraith creature token with menace. Then, if we control 9 or more Wraiths, Wraiths you control have base power and toughness 9/9 until end of turn. So, cast spells, make Wraiths, and take advantage of those Wraiths having menace and outpace our opponent's ability to block them. So we want lots of Wraiths, and we also want to be casting multiple instants and sorceries. So potential routes to achieve this are Wraith Typal. There's 11 creatures with Wraith as a creature type, a handful of Swamp Walkers, the Canoptic Wraith, aka Burnished Heart 40k Makeover Edition, and then we have the Wraiths introduced alongside Lord of the Nazgul from the LOTR set. The Nazguls, which we can have in multiples, will allow us to lightly fill our deck with 19 Wraiths, including our commander, and as you will know by now, I fully encourage this level of imprecision. I mean, 9/9 Swamp Walkers are not too shabby with a little help. Or we can go for Dimir Shapeshifters with all creature types giving us flying Wraiths, Wraiths that can't be blocked by any number of creatures, or sneaky Wraiths that can turn our non-Wraith support creatures into Wraiths for that surprise 9/9 thwack. Further, there is the well-trodden path of copying our commander with clone effects like Irenicus' Val Duplication, Sakashima, and Spark Double, so casting a 1-mana value spell creates multiple Wraiths, and we saw how bonkers that was in my Aragorn the United deck tech. Or fill your deck with black and blue token making cards like Bitter Blossom, Flip the Switch and Plague of Vermin, then cast a mass polymorph to get all the Wraiths out of your deck onto the field at once. That's probably my second favourite idea, and drop a comment and subscribe below if you'd like to see a Lord of the Nazgul polymorph deck tech on the channel. So, regardless of how you meet your Wraith quota, we want to be casting low-costed instant and sorceries that do the nuts and bolts things that we do in every commander match. Draw a card, create a Wraith. Protect our game plan, create a Wraith. Interact with an opponent's board, create a Wraith. Hydroblast, that's really niche. Red permanents, what if my opponent isn't playing red? It's a bit of a dead draw. If only there was a way to use cheap instants and sorceries to make colour hosing cards function in casual EDH whilst incidentally creating an army of 3/3 Wraiths. Welcome to Lord of the Nazgul meets Bob Ross. So, why don't we see more cards like Hydroblast in casual EDH? The main reason is that, unlike in competitive EDH, casual lacks a clearly defined metagame. You don't know what you're going to be facing from one game to the next. And so if you've packed your deck with lots of cards that engage with certain colours, well, they could be dead draws, but not in this deck. We will not have that problem because we have numerous ways to change the text of some pretty nasty colour hosing effects. Get ready to be really popular with hackable cards that counter spells of a certain colour. Stromglad Cabal and Thrall Wizard counter white and black spells respectively, and note that Thrall Wizard doesn't tap to achieve this, so you can counter spells for every 2 mana. Death Grip and Douse also contribute to repeatable control as enchantments with hackable colour words and 2 casting cost activations. I suggest some political manoeuvrings here, picking colours that focus on one player who is ahead so you can make deals with other players to keep them in check. Repeatable counters have "Hello, I'm the arch enemy, ask me how" printed all over them in invisible ink. Tidal Control has a super restrictive cumulative upkeep, but anyone can pay life to counter spells of your chosen colour. Super political, and a pseudo time warp for players who will not want to cast anything when the entire table has a say on what gets cast. Pure collaborative evil. Hibernation can be hacked to return all permanents of a certain type back to their owner's hands, and the flexibility of Washout to choose that that colour without extra support is further supported by cards like Darkest Hour and Shifting Sky to affect the entire board. Use with caution, this will include us. As with many control decks, holding back while opponents overcommit is the correct strategy, especially when we have access to cards like Nature's Ruin and Perish. Both destroy all green creatures. I rarely play a game where someone isn't representing the best colour in EDH, but you know, it's not easy being green when their key, draw, ramp and win con pieces are in the bin. No one playing green, shocker, but let's just hack the spells on the stack to a colour being played. Bye board, and all the time each sorcery and instant is adding to our board while we take away from theirs. Flooded Woodland states that green creatures can't attack unless its controller sacks a land for each creature attacking. Let's hack that to blue for the merfolk player, red for the goblins or white for the soldiers, but maybe not black unless we have lethal with our token army of black wraiths and can afford to suffer at the hands of our own enchantment. Meet Luan's Cephalid Empress. Her ETB trigger of returning a certain colour of creature to their opponent's hands can be responded to on the stack to change it from blue, but because many of the colour hacking spells say replace all instances of that colour word, it changes the second ability on the card that says blue creatures cannot be cast by opponents. Put those creatures away and never see them again while the Empress is swanning about the board. And did I mention the stacks pieces? I didn't. How forgetful of me. Chill and High Seas make certain colour spells more expensive, change them to suit your needs. Somewhere, Grand Arbiter Augustine IV is slow clapping and nodding his head. On to the instants and sorceries that inspired the deck for colour hacking spells that have been waiting for so long for the perfect Emir Spellslinger commander. These spells are more or less sleight of mind variants. Whim of Volrath adds in changing a basic land type as an option, perfect if you've gone for that swamp walking wraith, which could now be a mountain walking or island walking wraith. Whim also has buyback, so we can do it again. Glamour gives us retrace, so we can perform our hey presto colour changing tricks a second time by discarding a land to cast it from the graveyard, and Spectral Shift adds Entwine for a land and colour changing double whammy. Alter Reality provides the effect with flashback for a second cast in the graveyard, and Trait Doctoring is perfect to put onto an evasive flyer like the Lord of the Nazgul or a Wraith with Menace, as it encodes the spell to them and allows a recast trigger on combat damage. Then we have two permanents that assist our plan with Blind Seer, the poster boy for mono blue versions of colour changing decks, who can change the colour of a spell or permanent to that of your choice, and Distorting Lens just affecting permanents. With all this evil painting by numbers, we need further tools to keep the multicoloured splatters of our opponent's game plans covering the game board. Somewhere and Hello is slow clapping and nodding his head. Isochron Scepter lets us exile a hacking spell from the graveyard so we can cast it again for 2 later. The Sword of Once and Future serves multiple purposes. It provides hackable colour protection from blue or black, or whatever you deign it to be, and also recasting a Sleight of Mind effect from the graveyard upon combat damage. Leer and Snapcaster Mage, supporters of the arts, give flashback to those spells. Note the nombo with Leer and our own Hydroblast effects. Proceed with caution. Elite Arcanist allows us to exile a spell from our hand so they can add the spell to their repertoire and sling them around multiple times. And Toshiro Umezawa celebrates the death of opponent's creatures with the option of recasting an instant from our graveyard. I love Toshiro. Check out some of his early watercolour work, truly breathtaking. Then we have some permanents with protection from in their text, which we can tailor to our needs. Cerulean Drake has protection for red and flying, and we can also sacrifice it to counter target spell that targets you. Coast Watcher has flying and protection from green, Weatherseed Fairies, flying protection from red, and Sea Sprite, flying protection from red. Akroma's Memorial is pricey at a mana value of 7, but we are a control deck and we can counter, destroy and paint our opponents into a corner before dropping this keyword granting wincon. So if you have visited me before, you know I preach at the Church of Redundancy, and I have 3 lieutenants for you that can do the heavy lifting if our Lord is not on the board, who create tokens every time we cast an instant or sorcery. Sedgemoor Witch creates us 1/1 black and green pest creature tokens whenever we cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, and is further backed up by Menace and Ward, pay 3 life. Murmuring Mystic will create us a 1/1 bluebird illusion creature token with flying, and Tolran Sky Summoner will create 2/2 blue drakes every time we cast one of our instants or sorceries. Bumping up our spell quota is a selection of cantrip spells that produce an effect, create a wraith, and draw us a card, because using these card hacking spells, that's 2 cards to achieve 1 effect, is inherently card disadvantage. However, slightly offset by creating 2 wraiths, but it does mean cards are flying out of our hand, so we need to keep filling that back up. These cantrip spells will help us. Some examples include Aphotic Wisps, creating evasion for that last bit of damage we need, and have a hackable colour word in the text, while Ponder lets us dig for answers and set up a draw. Consider lets us put a spell in the yard that can be flashback later, and Peak does something that personally grinds my gears, allowing us to see an opponent's hands. Further card draw is enabled by Archmage Emeritus, cast an instance or sorcery, draw a card, and with Wavebreak Hippocamp, we draw cards when we cast our first instant in another player's turn. And a starving artist cannot survive on Jank alone, so we have a Mystic Remora and a Black Market Connections to draw us cards the efficient way, with Black Market Connections sneakily pumping out wraiths. Ramp is the usual beige affair with the exception of this mana dork, Scuttlemutt. He taps for mana and can change the colour of a target creature, pulling double duty in this deck. And Scuttlemutt is a lot of fun to say. And there you have it. This is a very janky deck, obviously. And your opponents might forgive you for the horrendous control elements in it because of how uniquely you achieve them and because you didn't put the following cards into the deck. But you could if you wanted to. There are just places I couldn't bring myself to go. But you go on, treat yourself. If you've enjoyed this humble free content, a like and subscribe would mean the world to me. There are 3 other Lord of the Rings themed deck techs on my channel: Tom Bombadil, Aragorn the Uniter, and Shelob Child of Ungoliant. So check those out. And until next time, I've been Lee, and this has been MTG Specs.